everyone. I'm Simona Milanovic. I'm an Android developer relations engineer working at Google. I work on Android Studio and AI tooling for Android development. And today we're going to show you how Android Studio, AI tooling, and Android skills work together to speed up and support your day-to-day development. So we'll start by seeing how Gemini and Android Studio capabilities support you in your entire development cycle. So things like starting with the planning and the build phase, things like prototyping a new app, adding a new feature, relying on capabilities like planning mode and the MCP integration. Then we'll see which features can be used for testing, optimization, and maintenance. So how to leverage Studio's integration with journeys, app quality insights, and dependency management. And finally, we'll see how you can extend Android Studio even further with custom workflows and specialized knowledge through our very own Android skills. So these features are relevant, and they're tailored to all levels of developers, those who are just getting started with Android development and their first app, as well as those more experienced developers with their more mature projects. So let's start from the absolute first step. So a new idea for a new project. Gemini and Android Studio is able to get you from a prompt to a prototype really fast, which means that whether you're looking to finally start a weekend project that you've been postponing for months, or if you have a groundbreaking new idea for a new business app, Gemini can help you with it. That leaves you with more time for building on top of its scaffolding and then focusing a bit more on the exciting and more complex parts of your development. Studio's new project assistant builds a fully functioning Android prototype from just a prompt with as much or little detail as you're willing to give it. Behind the scenes, we actually leverage Gemini and Android Studio Agent to plan and design the look and feel of the application, and Studio's integration with our latest best practices and guidance for Android development, including support for adaptive layouts for different form factors. So let's see this with a demo. Let's cut to the demo and see how Android Studio can help out with this. So if you are in Studio, to kick this flow off, you'll go into the new project setting, and you'll go into the Create with AI workflow. And here I could type in something like fitness app with a step counter, and I can kick that off now. However, considering that I don't think anyone is really keen on watching the LLM generate new code, I'm going to go ahead, and you might see this throughout the talk. I'm just going to go ahead and skip to the final, to a run that I previously ran, because this might take a while. So if we look at the fitness app demo that I built with this exact same feature, you can see that once it starts doing its work, it actually tries to generate a PRD for a fitness tracker app with a step counter, and provide you with all of the proposed key features that it comes up with. Bear in mind, I haven't given it any sort of other information. I just gave it a bare bones, create a fitness app. So you can actually customize this and be as specific as you want and propose the exact features yourself. Aside from that, it also comes up with a proposal for the tech stack, which obviously supports things like Compose, Kotlin, the latest material APIs, things like Jetpack Navigation 3, and also the adaptive libraries coming from Material. Now, once I kind of approve this, and it also provides information on how to integrate this. So obviously, for the step counter, it does have to have the hardware support for it. So aside from that, if I scroll down, you can also see that at the end it provides a summary of everything that it's built. And again, it's up to you to tweak this accordingly before you approve the plan, and you can always leverage the planning mode to do so, to generate a markdown with all the implementation steps and then edit them along the way and tweak this to your own custom needs. So if I quickly run this app, this is the prototype that it built with just single prompt for me. So yeah, this is looking pretty good. Again, up to you to kind of tweak it according to your own use case. So if we go back to the slides, in addition, if you combine this feature, so the new project assistant, with a paid Gemini API key, the new project assistant can also generate design mocks first before starting the actual prototype. So this allows you to actually see a preview of your entire app and then tweak the designs before the implementation as well, which is pretty handy. As mentioned, the new project assistant also generates outputs with support for different form factors, scaffolding your project from the very beginning with appropriate layouts, latest navigation, and components optimized for tablets, foldables, and other devices from the start. So it does so by referencing the adaptive guidelines. And it also has additional logic to test your app on large device emulators when they're available. So simply configure your required device in the emulator, and you can test it, for you. OK, so now we have a scaffolding. We have a prototype with a fitness app. Let's jump forward a bit more in time. So now we're kind of further along in development, and we're ready to add more features to this app. Let's say that we want to add a Health Connect integration in the app. Our app should share the step count with any other apps or retrieve the workout data from other apps that you might be using. We also want to ensure that this implementation for this specific feature follows our specific team and product specifications. This might be commonly tracked in an external tool elsewhere outside of Studio, of course. So as you can see, this feature request is quite lengthy, but Gemini can adapt to work with any sort of levels of complexities or any sort of instructions that it's given to it. But first, we need a way of getting Android Studio to communicate with this external tool. So to accomplish this, you might have heard, but we turn to MCP, which is the Model Context Protocol. It's a standardized mechanism for extending AI agents with new tools and capabilities. So basically, the common comparison of a USB-C port for a wide range of AI integrations. MCP handles service discovery and provides standardized ways to package and send the structured context to Gemini. So Android Studio MCP support means that there's a really rich ecosystem of tools that are available today that you can integrate with Gemini and Android Studio. So as implementing this feature is a bit more complex for any similar tasks, make sure to enable planning mode. New Project Assistant leverages this new feature as well to kick off a plan for you as the first step. So this planning mode is basically a feature that you can use for any prompts within Gemini and Android Studio. And it pairs really well with larger, more complex tasks that you want to delegate to the agent, because obviously it breaks them down into actionable tasks. It generates a task list and a detailed plan, and it fully architects the solution before any sort of implementation. It takes account any additional context that you give it, feature requests, product specs, things like the requirements that we have for our Health Connect feature, and it ties it all into the generated plan. Of course, you can edit it or tweak it according to your own use case before you approve it, and tailor it to what you want to be done. This way, you're able to implement more complex features with Gemini and Android Studio while having still the full control of the output. Now, one additional pro tip here is, since we all find ourselves developing with AI more often, it means that multitasking is becoming crucial. So if you work on multiple things at the same time, Agent Mode also now supports parallel threads, so parallel conversations. While you're waiting for a long-running task, if you have another question, simply click on the plus to create a new conversation. And you can use the history to go back and forth between all of these multiple threads. So let's see this in action. If I wanted to show you how to integrate one of the new features, like Health Connect, the most important thing to do is obviously to enable the MCP server. So here I'm actually connected to the GitHub MCP server, and I'm going to let this run. And for the sake of time, I'm going to show you one of the runs that I previously ran with this integration. So you can see if I tell it to implement GitHub issue number 1, it looks into the all available tools that are relevant for this task. So in this case, it looked at my specific GitHub and also looked at my repositories and read the exact issue that I'm talking about. After that, because I've enabled planning mode when I was performing this, I was able to generate a task list of everything that it needs to do for this specific feature. And on top of that, create an implementation plan that is obviously a lot more detailed that you can tweak and basically tailor to how you want this feature to be implemented for you. So do make sure to try it out, because you can experiment a lot with this, and you can add a lot of different features from different specifications hosted elsewhere. Great. OK, so in this case, if you start looking, let's cut to the slides, please. Once you're kind of done with implementing the feature, there are a few more steps that you might turn to when designing an app. Basically, once this set of the scaffolding and the new features is done, I would actually want to do something like set up user profiles and a database to log my workouts for this specific app. So to do so quickly, you can ask the agent to connect to Firebase and help you set up your Firestore databases and authentication, which means that you deliver a fully working app end-to-end. And finally, it's also now easier for you to publish your app to test tracks on Play. For new apps, create a new app entry in the internal test track directly from Android Studio. For existing apps, you can upload new releases to Play console test tracks. We're trying to make the whole process a lot easier and more seamless. That starts in Android Studio, from app creation to things like publishing. Once we're kind of done with building the app's prototype and adding a lot of features and connections to other hosting locations, what else we can do is see how Android Studio actually supports us in the next phase of development. So things like testing, optimization, and maintenance. Ensuring test coverage is really important. It's vital, not only for app quality and your team's confidence in general, but also to provide agents with the information they need to determine whether their tasks are successful or not. Journeys in Gemini is the agent's mode of supporting you in testing and maintaining your code base. Journeys leverages Gemini's multimodal capabilities to write end-to-end UI tests that dynamically adapt to your application's UI. Journeys also leverages Gemini to interact with your app in real time, so giving you tests that actually dynamically adapt with your UI over time or across devices. But now, with the latest agent mode integration, Journey also has a powerful feature to iteratively and interactively fix test failures as well. We've also added support for executing journeys directly from the command line with Android CLI. This also includes bundled AI skills for creating and executing journeys. Android CLI integration means that journeys can also easily be invoked in headless environments like a CI. This means you can run journeys and its test automatically on a PR, and it can highlight your app's behavior when it's diverged from your original specification. Here you can actually see Gemini CLI invoking a journey test with the help of Android CLI. Just like we saw with Android Studio Agent Mode, Gemini has actual visibility into the test execution and the test results, and it can offer to kind of heal a malformed test or directly fix any underlying causes that cause a test to fail. So to help with the tracking of the quality and the stability of your project, App Quality Insights also provides a direct view into the production data. It can aggregate crash reports from sources like Play's Android Vitals or Firebase Crashlytics. Once a crash is identified, Gemini analyzes the user's stack traces, and it suggests potential code fixes as well. The integration with Agent Mode now means that it goes further than just suggesting things. It's now able to iterate on the proposed fixes and test them to confirm whether the bug is resolved before you continue working, automating the entire validation loop. Now, a critical part of the maintenance is a regular management of dependencies. But on average, apps depend on a lot of libraries that depend on other libraries and so on. So each upgrade can pull in a web of seemingly unrelated changes. And this task can turn into a bit of a nightmare, especially for large code bases. And we've heard your feedback on how time-consuming this is. So we put Gemini and Android Studio to work. The agent is able to automatically apply dependency updates for you. Just right-click in your version catalog, which we'll see soon in the demo, and ask it to update your dependencies. Gemini will then analyze your version catalog to identify stale libraries and proceed to inspect the documentation for those libraries to identify changes. This means that in the end, it also builds and verifies whether your test is working properly after all the changes have been applied. So let me show you this again in action with a demo. So in here, I actually have quite a lot of updated dependencies, which if I right-click, go to the AI settings, I can actually choose to update the dependencies here. And once it's kind of running, it will do an analysis of my entire code base and the version catalog, and it'll offer all the dependencies to upgrade. Now, this might also take a while as well. So I encourage you to try this out, especially if you pair it with the planning mode. You can actually tweak all of the provided updates of these specific libraries and ensure that it migrates the code for you as well. Because, as mentioned, these specific updates also check the release notes for every single library that you have, and it tries to detect all of the potential changes in the code that it actually has to perform for you to kind of just let it run, migrate all of the APIs that might have been changed in the upcoming versions, and after that, confirm whether you want the change to be performed or not. So because it's taking a bit of time, I'm going to let you try this out yourself. Cool. OK. So let's go back to the slides. Other than library version updates, we also need to make sure that we regularly upgrade our AGP version to keep up with Android Studio build system. Now, for this, you can use the AGP upgrade assistant built into Studio directly. Or for more customizable experience or assistance with this migration, you can leverage a new format that we called Android Skills. For supported workflows like this one, all you need to do is go into the agent mode to help update your AGP version, and the skill is invoked automatically. This is also, again, really well paired with planning mode because it gives the agent extra capacity to tackle a certain task. Now, after examining the project, following the skill instructions, the agent summarizes its recommendations and next steps for the AGP upgrade in a detailed implementation plan, which is generated with the planning mode, which, again, you can accept or edit. Android Skills are a powerful new capability that we added straight into Android Studio, bringing deeper knowledge of Android to the agent mode, even for topics that are outside of the model training cutoff. But to understand how skills exactly augment mode, we need to dive in deeper into this topic. So delegating your AGP upgrade is just one of many things that can now be handled for you using a powerful combination of Gemini and Android Studio or any other AI tool of your choice, along with our Android Skills. And we have a lot more of those to share with you, but there's first things that we need to cover. Things like, what exactly are skills? How do they work? And how does Studio leverage this new capability? We're going to work with one, let's say, R8 as an example. Skills are the open standard markdown files, skill.md, that represent modular instruction sets for AI agents and tools. They provide a technical specification for a task, grounding the LLMs with up-to-date and domain-specific knowledge. They enable the execution and specialized workflows and expertise through added knowledge and context. So how do you actually use them in your day-to-day work? Generally, you fetch skills from a trusted source, and you place them in a dedicated directory, such as your project or a root or a global directory spread across multiple different agents. Using Android Studio as an example, skills can go into a workspace-specific or a global directory. After that, agents are aware of all present skills by keeping a list of the skills metadata and sending it to the LLM on your every prompt. When the user sends a prompt, the LLM tries to match the skills metadata, so the name and the description, with the executed task. To better support you in the Android development with AI, we launched the official Android Skills. This is a dedicated repository of AI-optimized instructions to help models better understand and execute specific patterns that follow our best practices and guidance on Android development. To install skills, you can, or update them regularly. We recommend using Android CLI, so check out the documentation for this a bit more. Or you can also go straight into the GitHub repository for the latest updates. Now, with Android Skills, we wanted to tackle a few challenges of working with LLMs. LLMs often lack context on newest Android frameworks and changes due to their training cut updates. So if you ask it to migrate a legacy navigation, they often won't know anything about the latest frameworks. So Skills allow us to deliver these updates to AI tools instantly. Similarly, you might ask LLMs to analyze a project, and it can often come up with a response that is unstructured and quite generic, not really helpful. Android Skills are the ones that guide LLMs in executing these more complex but important workflows when following our best practices. Traditional documentation can be descriptive, it can be conceptual and high level, and while that's really important for our learning, it can be less performant with LLMs. They tend to require precise and actionable instructions. Standard docs teach humans how to think and the whys behind all of this, and Skills tell LLMs what and how to do it and where to find information. So knowing all of that, our focus is publishing Android Skills for areas where our testing, our evals actually showed that LLMs need more grounding and steering. So workflows such as AGP9 and XML to compose migrations, adding navigation 3 to your project, or migrating away from nav2, analysis of the R8 config, enabling edge-to-edge support, and a lot more. So Android Skills can be roughly split into procedural and specialized workflows. These are demonstrating a step-by-step custom process to complete a task. So like, for example, the R8 config analysis. Reference and knowledge-based. So these serve as a collection of sources and pointers to other supporting files, grounding the LLMs with more knowledge and expertise. So for example, how the edge-to-edge skill teaches the LLM how to implement full support for it. And of course, you can have hybrid skills, which integrate both procedural and knowledge-based elements. So for example, the XML to compose skill is the one doing that. Android Skills are supported by Android Studio and Android CLI, but they're designed to be reusable across all AI tools that have support for skills, which are all of the biggest ones, and including our very own, like Google Antigravity and AI Studio. For Android Studio, a selected subset of Android Skills is preloaded directly within, and you can enable them in the settings already today. These are available at the agent startup, and they're activated automatically, so no manual download needed in this case. You can, of course, add more skills manually. You can check out the GitHub repo or place them in a dedicated skills directory in Studio. But feel free to check out the documentation for more information on this. Android CLI also offers full integration with Android Skills. You can install them to dedicated directories, but you can also specify which skills you want. You can remove them, add them, list them, and so on. You can even tweak them or write your own. But if you're going to write your own, I want to share a few tips of our own learning that we had when we were writing Android Skills. First is, don't insist on skills for user journeys that the LLMs are pretty good at already. Skills are meant to supplement the LLM's default knowledge, so forcing a skill for a task it's already doing pretty well is really unnecessary. It just adds unnecessary overhead. So rely on testing thoroughly using different scenarios through evals. Don't use LLMs to generate skills from scratch without providing any additional sources of knowledge. If the LLM can already generate a skill without anything else, it already knows it, so why bother with a skill? think about what to add to agents.md versus a skill.md. So the entire content of the agents.md is sent as context for every single user prompt, while skills are activated on demand, so only when they're needed and when the task is actually relevant to the skill. This is a crucial difference between the two. Good skills candidates are usually brand new APIs and version behavior changes. So information that is so recent that the model knows little or nothing about it, as well as custom and domain-specific workflows, things like large procedural migrations that are very unique to your code bases. Less is more. Find the minimum skill scope and length that provides the maximum benefits. Generally, succinct skills perform better than the very lengthy ones because LLMs start forgetting information if you throw too much context their way. And finally, always use skills from trusted sources and validate them before running. So rely on evals here as well, but always ensure to verify the skill source and where it's coming from because they have been known to be misused. OK, so let's look at one particularly handy Android skill so that I show you all of this in action, basically. If we're talking about opportunities to modernize an app, the first thing that comes to mind is migrating XML to Jetpack Compose. As you might have heard already in I/O, we are now Compose first. This means that we're now advising you to write new code and features in Compose, as well as migrate old XML views, with views moving into maintenance mode. Basically, we recommend you to write all of your Android UI code in Jetpack Compose across different form factors. To support you in this, we published an XML to Compose skill, Android skill, to better guide you or any agents and AI tools of your choice in this migration effort. So let's see the skill in action, what it looks like, and how it works with Android Studio. So let's cut to the demo. Great. OK, so here we have one of our older samples that is written entirely in XML from the scratch. And what I want to do is actually show you how this works. This is from a result from a previous run, and I've removed all the changes. So let me start this from scratch. It takes a while for this to run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this off and say migrate a layout from XML to Compose. I'm going to let it run in the background. And then we're going to come back to the results towards the end of this, and hoping that it starts doing correct things. OK. So like I said, XML in its entirety. And when we kind of started testing the migration XML to Compose ourselves with LLMs, we realized that the LLMs are pretty good already at doing the basic things. So things like mapping material components from XML to Compose, mapping recycler view to lazy layouts, et cetera, like the very basics. But what we realized that it really struggles to come up with a structured workflow that is consistent across many runs, and that is divided into very concrete subtasks that can support you no matter which layout you're trying to migrate. And this is exactly what we've done. We've defined certain steps for performing this migration. We also supported it with we also supported the skill with additional knowledge, things that are coming from our best practices, or the latest information, like, for example, the latest Compose BOM versioning, et cetera. So it's well supported by additional information that comes from beyond the skill itself. So if we look at the actual skill, there's a few things to notice here. As we mentioned, the most important, well, there are actually basically requirements for a skill, is the YAML metadata at the very top. The two required fields are name and the description, which are pretty self-explanatory here. And other than that, you can add a lot of other information, but it's not required. These are necessary for the skill detection and activation. And as you can see, the description here has all the important keywords that are used for the LLM to actually match the task you're providing it with the required skill. So I have all the important keywords that are triggers, like Android, XML, Compose, step-by-step process, validation, migration, interop, et cetera. So you need to always kind of think about what are going to be the trigger points for matching an ongoing task execution with a specific skill. Aside from that, the only other requirement is for this main file to be called skill.md in uppercase. And honestly, it's not a requirement, but it is, in a way, is to have some sort of content in the body of the main skill as well. That's it, pretty much. Everything else that you want to add to the skill is anything that you think is necessary or a nice to have for the successful execution of this task in hand by the agent. OK, so we've covered the requirements, and we've covered the metadata. Now, what I want to talk about is exactly how we kind of broke down these specific subtasks. We looked at what are the most important steps that pretty much need to be consistent no matter which layout or which code base is using this skill. This means that this workflow is pretty sturdy, but it applies to a variety of code bases. So it means small or big, et cetera. But an important best practice for this skill, or pretty much any other, I would say, is to kind of always take a skill and tweak it to your own code base and your own specific team workflows. This pretty much maximizes the usage of a skill for your own personal intentions. And it ensures that the skill or the LLM is actually able to catch all of those small nits that might be hidden away in your code base that it wouldn't look or know by default itself. So if I wanted to tweak this, I could say something like migrate only layout from feature module X. Maybe I want to kill the setting up of the composed dependencies because I don't need that. Or maybe to set up my design system or migrate it, I can provide it with something like a design system markdown as my own supporting file that might come from my, for example, team documentation on how we do our design system, for example. So you gotta get the point. The important note here to keep in mind is whenever you tweak an existing skill like this, always make sure to copy it somewhere else, move it elsewhere, rename it, do whatever, but just make it different from the originating one, because if you're pulling this from a source, you tweak your skill, and then you pull the latest changes from the remote source, it's going to override your local changes. So make this into a habit. If you tweak it, put it elsewhere, rename it, and you're safe in that case. OK, cool. So I think you got the gist of this. Like I said, aside from the actual main skill.md, you can see that we have a lot of other files here. These are called supporting files, and they're basically here to supplement the main knowledge that comes from the skill by breaking it up into separate subtasks. Now, this is quite important to do because skills are very limited in how, in theory, they're limited. They should be limited. They shouldn't be too long because you're going to overwhelm the context of your agent. Ensure to break up your skill into executable tasks that might be skippable or might be isolated from the main workflow. And as you can see, we have quite a lot of those. An important note there to know is every time that, as you can see, we reference them at specific points in time, we always specify for every supporting file exactly when and how it should be used. The reason we do that and why it is basically a best practice is because it teaches the LLM to basically only load that supporting file on demand as well, so only when it's necessary, which means that in this specific case, if I have set up composed dependencies and the compiler properly, it's going to skip the invocation of this supplemental file. And that helps a lot with optimizing for context. So aside from that, let's look at one specific supporting file. So as I said, make sure to take out any task that can be skipped or done in isolation into a supporting file. And as you can see, we use a very specific kind of language across these skills, not just in this file, but in the entire skills repository that we have. The language that we tend to use is very procedural, very concise, very instructional. We avoid usages of vague or unmeasured words. And when we do use vague words, which is the word optimal, because LLMs don't really know what optimal means to us, we always specify the exact criteria of what we mean by optimal. So in that case, like, make a note. It's good practice to kind of always provide specific criteria to the LLMs around what is success, how do you define success, how do you define optimal things, validation, any sort of criteria that can make it measure something better for you. OK, cool. So we've covered kind of the basics of this. I just want to show you what it actually did. So we can see that it here activated the main skill. And then it went into the analysis of the project, because that's one of the supporting files it realized it needs. And it's probably done a lot of work. OK, cool. So I can see here that it decided to migrate fragment plan detail. And it migrated it into a plan detail screen. And let's do a quick comparison of this so that we see what it looks like. OK, cool. So you can look at the summary later if you want to, but I can visually see that it's pretty consistent. There are some tweaks here and there that I can notice that I would want to tweak, but the whole idea with activating this skill and using this skill is for you to get a scaffolding and get the more kind of repetitive things done for you, and you can then kind of focus on the more fun stuff. So make sure to try the skill out or any of the other ones. Hopefully, it can help you kick this migration process and move more towards Compose first. OK, cool. So let's go back to the slides for a recap. We've covered quite a bit today. I hope this gave you an insight into how Android Studio can support you and how its capabilities can support all the phases of the development cycle. So from prototyping, a brand new app idea, adding simpler and more complex features, maintenance, testing, optimization, verifying stabilities, extending the agent with more workflows and knowledge, et cetera. So all of these features that we showed today work with any other models that you might use as well, not just Gemini. You can bring your own API key to use foundational models or even local ones like Gemma. Feel free to take this photo if you want, and then you can kind of use it for any sort of documentation that you might want to find on any of these topics that we covered today.